Welcome, restless souls, to Carman's Crypt. I'm Carman, keeper of forgotten tales and curator of nightmares. You've wandered into my domain, where each week I unearth a fresh horror from the depths of human imagination. In these darkened halls, stories wait like hungry shadows. Each tale we've collected whispers of terrors both ancient and new. From crumbling mansions where something skitters behind the walls, to that strange text message you received at 3 a.m. from a number that shouldn't exist. So gather close, the candles are lit, the shadows grow long, and the witching hour is upon us. Are you prepared to face what lurks in the darkest recesses of Carman's Crypt? Lock your doors, steel your nerves, and remember, here, every fear comes to life. This is Carman's Crypt. Your sanctuary of scares awaits. Margot Sullivan woke to the sound of her own screaming. The echo of it hung in the darkness of her bedroom, a fading wail that seemed to belong to someone else entirely. She pressed her palm against her chest, feeling her heart hammer against her ribs, like something desperate to escape. The sheets beneath her were soaked through with sweat, clinging to her skin like a second layer she couldn't shed. The dream again, always the same dream. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, squinting against the harsh glow. 3:47 a.m. The hollow hours, her grandmother used to call them. That dead stretch of night when the veil between worlds grew thin as tissue paper. Margot had always thought it was just another one of Nene's superstitions, filed away alongside her warnings about whistling after dark and sleeping with wet hair. But lately, in these fractured hours before dawn, Margot wasn't so sure. 3 weeks. It had been 3 weeks since the accident at Whispering Pines Care Home, and still, the dreams came every night without fail. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and sat there, head in her hands, trying to separate the real from the imagined. In the dream, she was always back in room 14, standing at Eleanor Vance's bedside. The old woman's eyes would snap open, not the milky, unfocused eyes of advanced dementia, but sharp and knowing, burning with an intelligence that shouldn't have been there. And then Eleanor's hand would shoot out, her grip impossibly strong, fingers digging into Margot's wrist, hard enough to grind the bones together, her mouth opening to release not words, but a sound. A wet, gurgling shriek that seemed to come from somewhere far deeper than her withered lungs, somewhere below the floor, below the earth, below everything. Margot could still feel the phantom pressure of those fingers on her wrist. When she looked down at her arm in the dim light, she could see the bruises that had never faded. 5 dark ovals like fingerprints pressed into clay. She forced herself to stand, to move, to do something other than sit in the dark replaying it. The floorboards creaked beneath her bare feet as she padded to the bathroom. She didn't turn on the light, couldn't bear to see her own reflection just yet, but splashed cold water on her face, letting it drip down her chin and onto her sleep shirt. The water felt wrong, thicker than it should be. Margot's hands froze halfway to her face. In the darkness, she couldn't see the liquid dripping from her fingers, but she could feel it, viscous, slightly warm, with a faint smell like copper and rot. Her stomach lurched. She fumbled for the light switch. The fluorescent bulb flickered on, buzzing and strobing. In the stuttering light, she saw her hands, clean, wet with nothing but water. The sink was white. The drain was empty. But her reflection in the mirror was smiling, and Margot wasn't. She stumbled backward, hitting the doorframe hard enough to bruise her shoulder. When she looked again, the reflection showed only her own terrified face. Just a trick of the flickering light. Just exhaustion and stress and the lingering residue of nightmares. Just the accident. That's what they're calling it. A tragic but natural death, the coroner had ruled. Eleanor Vance, 93 years old, severe dementia, multiple organ failure. Nothing unusual about an elderly woman passing in her sleep at a care facility. These things happened. They happened all the time. But Margot had been there when it happened. She had been the one holding Eleanor's hand. And she knew that what she had witnessed was anything but natural. The kitchen light flickered as she turned it on, the ancient fluorescent tube buzzing in protest. Margot's apartment was small, a converted attic space in an old Victorian that had been chopped into rental units sometime in the 70s. She had moved here 2 years ago when she started working at Whispering Pines, drawn by the cheap rent and the proximity to work. Now the cramped rooms felt less like a cozy refuge and more like a coffin stood on end. She filled the kettle automatically, her hands moving through the familiar motions, while her mind stayed trapped 3 weeks in the past. It had been a Tuesday. Margot remembered that specifically because Tuesdays were when the mobile library came, and she'd been planning to help Mrs. Patterson in room 8 pick out new audiobooks. But she'd never made it to the library cart because halfway through her morning rounds, the call light for room 14 had started flashing. Eleanor Vance wasn't her patient. That wing belonged to Sarah, the senior aide, but Sarah was on break and the light kept blinking, so Margot had gone to check. The room had been dark when she entered, darker than it should have been with the morning sun streaming through the other windows in the hallway. The blinds were drawn, the overhead light switched off, and for a moment, Margot couldn't see anything at all, just the slow beep of the heart monitor and the mechanical wheeze of the oxygen concentrator, and something else, a sound like a whisper, like dozens of voices speaking just below the threshold of hearing. "Mrs. Vance?" she called out softly. "Eleanor, are you all right?" A sound from the bed. Not words. Eleanor hadn't spoken coherently in months, but something wet and urgent, like meat being pulled apart. Margot moved closer, reaching for the lamp on the bedside table. The light revealed Eleanor sitting upright in bed, which should have been impossible. The old woman was bedridden, her muscles so atrophied that it took 2 aides to transfer her for bathing. But there she was, spine rigid, head tilted at an angle that made Margot think of a bird examining a worm. And her eyes were wrong. Not milky or unfocused, not even the sharp, knowing eyes from Margot's dreams. They were black, entirely black, pupil, iris, and sclera, all swallowed by a darkness that seemed to move, to swirl, like oil floating on water. "Eleanor?" Margot's voice came out strange, too high, cracking on the second syllable. Eleanor's mouth opened. Her jaw kept opening, unhinging like a snake's, stretching the papery skin of her cheeks until it split at the corners. And from that impossible maw came a sound that Margot would hear in her nightmares for the rest of her life. A sound like 1,000 voices screaming in harmony, like the death rattle of something that had never truly been alive. The kettle screamed. Margot jerked back to the present, her hand flying to her chest. Just the kettle, just water boiling. She was in her kitchen. She was awake. She was fine. She was fine. But when she looked down at her hands, she saw that her nails had gouged deep crescents into her palms without her noticing. Blood welled up in the wounds, dark and thick. She poured the hot water into a mug with trembling hands, not bothering with the tea bag. The warmth seeped into her palms, stinging the cuts, grounding her. This was real. The dream was just a dream, a trauma response, her brain processing what it couldn't understand. Except that wasn't quite true, was it? Because what had happened next in room 14 wasn't something her brain could process, wasn't something any brain should have to hold. Eleanor's hand had shot out with impossible speed, catching Margot's wrist before she could pull away. The old woman's grip was crushing, her fingers digging in until Margot felt the bones grind together, until something popped and sent white-hot pain shooting up her arm. She tried to scream, tried to pull away, but Eleanor held her fast, and then the transfer began. Margot had felt it like a violation, like something reaching into her through the point of contact and rummaging through her insides. Not just her mind, her everything, her memories, her fears, her identity. All of it suddenly laid bare before something ancient and hungry that picked through her like a crow picking through carrion. But worse than that was what flowed back the other way. Eleanor's memories poured into Margot like black water flooding a basement. Not the soft, faded memories of a woman slipping gently into dementia, but the sharp, crystalline memories of a lifetime of carefully hidden horrors. A childhood in a house where the walls wept blood when no one was watching. An adolescence spent learning to quiet the voices that followed her everywhere. Voices that told her to do things, terrible things, and promised relief if she only gave in. A young womanhood of desperate searching, trying to understand what lived inside her, what had always lived inside her, what had been passed down through her bloodline, like a genetic disease. And finally, mercifully, the dementia that had silenced it all. The great gray fog that had descended over Eleanor's mind and trapped the thing inside her in a prison of forgetting, until Margot's hand had touched hers and given it a way out. The mug slipped from Margot's fingers and shattered on the floor. She didn't move to clean it up. She sat frozen, staring at the spreading puddle, because she could see something in the liquid surface that shouldn't be there. A face. Not her reflection. The angle was wrong for that, but a face looking up at her from the spilled water. Not Eleanor's face, she realized now. Something older. Something that had worn Eleanor like a coat for 93 years and was now trying on Margot for size. The face smiled, showing way too many teeth. Margot squeezed her eyes shut and counted to 10. When she opened them again, the face was gone. Just water on worn linoleum. Just shards of ceramic catching the overhead light. "You're not real," she whispered. "You're not here." But even as she said it, she could feel the pressure building behind her eyes. The familiar sensation she had been experiencing ever since that day in room 14. Like something was trying to look out through her skull. Like her head was a house with windows, and something had moved in uninvited, and was now pressing its face against the glass, eager to see out. The first time she heard the voices clearly, she had been in the break room at work 5 days after the incident. Not whispers anymore, but words, clear as her own thoughts, but distinctly not hers. "Let me see," the voice had said, using her own internal monologue like a ventriloquist uses a dummy. "Let me see through your eyes. Let me taste through your tongue. Let me feel through your skin. It's been so long since I felt anything at all." She had bitten through her lip, trying not to scream. The voices were constant now. They narrated her every action, commented on her every thought, suggested things she tried desperately not to hear. And sometimes, in her peripheral vision, she caught glimpses of what the thing inside her wanted her to see. Dark figures standing in doorways with limbs that bent the wrong way, shadows that moved against the light and left wet trails on the walls, faces pressing through the plaster like drowning victims pressing against ice. Margot hadn't been back to work in 2 weeks. She had stopped answering her phone, stopped checking her email, stopped leaving the apartment. She ordered groceries delivered and left them rotting on the doorstep because the thought of opening the door, of letting in even a sliver of the outside world, filled her with a terror she couldn't name. But the thing inside her was getting stronger. She could feel it now, not just as pressure behind her eyes, but as a presence in her muscles, her bones, her blood. Sometimes her hand would move without her willing it. Sometimes she would find herself standing in front of the mirror, with no memory of walking there, watching her reflection do things she wasn't doing. Smile, wave, press its palm against the glass, like it was trying to reach through. Last night, she had woken up in the bathtub with the water running, her clothes soaked through, her fingers pruned. She had no memory of getting there, but she had found a word written in the steam on the mirror, in handwriting that wasn't hers. Soon. She forced herself to clean up the broken mug, moving mechanically through the motions. The clock on the microwave read 4:23 a.m. Still hours until dawn. Still trapped in the hollow hours when the veil was thin. She couldn't go back to sleep. Wouldn't even if she could. The dreams were too vivid, too real, and she was increasingly unsure where the dreams ended and waking life began. Instead, she went to the narrow closet in her bedroom and pulled out the box she had been avoiding for days. It was just a shoebox, nothing special, but inside it held everything she had been able to find out about Eleanor Vance. The diary she had found in Eleanor's admittance file had told her everything she needed to know, and everything she didn't want to know. It moves through touch, Eleanor had written in her cramped, faded script. I understand that now. It passed to me from Margaret when she died, and before that it was in Mother, and before Mother it was in Grandmother, going back and back through all the Beecher women to the beginning. We are its vessels, we are its homes, and when we die, it must find a new home or it dies with us. But I have found a way to trap it. The doctors say my mind is going, and they're right, but they don't understand that I'm doing it on purpose. I am building walls inside my head, walls of forgetting, walls that the thing cannot cross. If I can forget hard enough, if I can erase every corridor it might use to find its way out, then maybe it will be trapped forever. Maybe when I die, it will die with me, locked in the prison of my rotting brain. But if someone comes near me, if someone touches me at the end, and if someone reaches across and opens a door, God forgive them. God forgive them for what they'll become. Margot read the words again, but they blurred before her eyes. Not from tears, from something else. That's enough of that, her mouth said. But Margot hadn't told it to speak. Her hand that she wasn't controlling, reached out and crumpled the journal page. Her legs stood her up from the bed. Her feet walked her to the bathroom mirror. No, Margot whimpered, but the word came out small and weak, spoken from somewhere deep inside a body that was no longer entirely hers. No, please. Shh. Her reflection raised a finger to its lips, and Margot felt her own finger rise to mirror the gesture, felt the pressure of it against her mouth. Don't fight. It only hurts when you fight. In the mirror, her eyes were starting to change. The brown of her irises were seeping away, swirling down into darkness like water down a drain. Soon, there would be nothing left. Soon, she would be nothing left. "I've been waiting too long," the thing said with her voice, dreamy and content. "Eleanor was strong. She kept me locked away for decades. But you..." Her reflection smiled, and it was not Margot's smile. It was too wide, too knowing. "You're going to be so much more cooperative." "I'll fight," Margot managed to force out through lips that didn't want to obey her. "I'll do what Eleanor did. I'll forget. I'll..." Her hand moved before she could stop it, slamming against the mirror hard enough to crack the glass. Pain exploded through her knuckles, and she felt blood begin to flow. But the thing inside her didn't seem to notice or care. "Eleanor spent 60 years building her prison," it said. "You don't have 60 years. You don't have 60 days. I've been starving in the dark for so long. And now..." Her reflection pressed close to the cracked glass, and Margot saw that her eyes were entirely black now, bottomless pits that seemed to drink in the light. "Now, I'm going to make up for lost time." Margot tried to scream, tried to run, tried to do anything at all, but her body no longer belonged to her. She could only watch from behind her own eyes as her legs carried her out of the bathroom, as her hand reached for her phone, as her fingers scrolled through her contacts. "Your mother," the thing mused, stopped at the entry labeled Mom. "She lives alone, doesn't she, since your father passed away? She must be so worried about you. She'd come running if you called, if you said you needed help." "No," Margot pleaded. "No, please, not her." "It moves through touch," the thing reminded her, and she felt her face stretch into a smile she couldn't stop. "And I've been alone for so long, but I won't be alone much longer." Her finger pressed dial. The phone rang once, twice. "Margot?" Her mother's voice thick with sleep and worry. "Mamie, is that you? Are you okay? I've been so worried you haven't called." "Hi, Mom." Her voice came out perfectly normal, warm and loving, utterly Margot. "I'm so sorry I've been distant. I've just been going through something, and I think I really need you right now. Can you come over?" "Of course, baby, of course I can. I'll be there in an hour." "Thank you, Mom. I love you." "I love you too, Mamie." The call ended. Margot felt her phone slip from her fingers, heard it clatter on the floor somewhere far away. Inside her own skull, she screamed and screamed and screamed. But on the outside, her face just smiled that terrible smile, patient and content, as the first gray light of dawn began to creep through the windows. The hollow hours were ending. The veil was thickening, but it didn't matter anymore. The thing inside Margot didn't need doors or veils or the thin places between worlds. It had everything it needed right here, wrapped around it like a warm coat. It had hands that could reach out and touch, and soon it would have so many more. Margot's body walked to the front door and unlocked it. Then it sat down on the couch to wait, hands folded neatly in its lap, eyes fixed on the entrance, with an anticipation that had been building for 60 years. Inside, in the small dark corner of her mind where she was still herself, Margot prayed that her mother would sense something wrong, that she would see the blackness in her daughter's eyes and run, that she would do anything other than reach out to comfort her. But she knew her mother, knew that the first thing she would do when she walked through that door was wrap her arms around her daughter and hold her tight. The thing inside Margot knew it too. It smiled with Margot's face as the minutes ticked by, and somewhere far away, a car engine started. And so, dear listeners, we emerge from another dark corner of Carman's crypt. But remember, The horrors you've heard tonight are merely echoes of the terrors that await in the shadows of your mind. If you enjoyed your stay in the crypt, why not invite a friend to join us next week? After all, fear is best when shared. Leave a review if you dare, or share your own tales of terror on my social media, or on my website, carman-carrion.com. Who knows? Your nightmares might just become my next story. Until next time, keep checking under your bed, and remember, in Carman's Crypt, every fear comes to life, and no one is truly safe. Sweet dreams, if you can still sleep at all.